everyone, and welcome back to the Motorgraph World channel. My name's Mari. Today we're going to do a comparison. Now, the Stinger has been officially discontinued. Boo-hoo. I'm very sad about it. However, the G70 of the Genesis has now gone through a model year change and has now been renewed, and now both with 2.5-liter turbo engines. Let's take a look at why the Stinger has been discontinued, whereas the G70 is being continued with a model year change. Let's take a closer look. So let's take a look from the front faces. Which do you like better? For me, the Stinger has much more of an aggressive, ready-to-fight kind of look. It's a little bit more down on the road and a bit more aggressive. The G70, actually, there's not been any changes to the face of the car, only the insides that have been changed. It does have that impactful grille. However, overall, it doesn't look like a very sporty car, but it looks more of a luxurious sedan look. You can see the differences in the style and the total line of the cars. Now, the G70 is more of a sedan. You can see that through the entire line. And as for the Stinger, it's a fastback. And it's more elongated. The entire length of the car is much longer. The wheelbase is longer as well. I personally am a fan of the first generation and the second generation Stingers. I thought that they were both amazing. For me, it's kind of reminiscent of the older BMWs or German cars. If you see from the front all the way to the back, it's very rigid and straight lines. With the top line and the bottom line that you see, you don't see much curves or any type of slopes going upwards. It's more of a straight linear line going from front to back. It looks masculine and it also looks very fast. And now let's go over to the G70. We mentioned that the G70 was more like a sedan type, but of course it's a shorter, compact sedan and a sportier type. The lines start from a slightly lower point and then they move upwards. This is to depict a little bit more motion, more sportiness. However, in terms of aesthetics as well as design, there has been no change compared to the previous version. This is where I really believe that there are slight nuances. For me, the Stinger reminds me of kind of like a BMW type of aesthetic, whereas the G70 is more of the luxury sedan like the Mercedes-Benz kind of aesthetic or Lexus type of aesthetic. The Stinger is much more shorter. Just if you look at the top of the trunk, it's shorter, but actually inside it's larger. You have a higher hanging license plate, which actually brings your line of sight up and makes you feel as if the butt area or the behind is a little bit tighter and smaller. But if you compare actual size, the G70 is smaller. The width is a little bit smaller, but visually, this one looks a little bit bigger for me. But in terms of inside the trunk, the G70 is a bit smaller than the Stinger. One thing that has changed on the G70 is that before you had to have the sports package in order to have these exhaust pipes. However, now this comes as a default for all of your purchases. Whereas the Stinger has the two pipes on each side, which is again more of that sporty, more muscle car aesthetic. So now, are you ready for the Mari trunk test? I did mention that the Stinger is a little bit wider and spacious inside, so let's take a look. All right, can you see the differences? At first glance, even, you can see that the Stinger is much more spacious, whereas the G70 is really tiny in terms of the space. I'm not even sure if I can actually fit in. Let's go in. So for the Stinger, first of all, I can fully fit inside, and even without the cover, I think that I can get in even with the diagonal, and my legs can cover all of it. And it's actually deeper compared to the G70 as well. So you can actually put in more luggage. If you decide to take off this cover, then you'll be able to stack up. And now over to the G70. If you do the Mari trunk test, so I'm actually caught between the seat as well as the top part of the car. And if I stretch out my legs, similar to the Stinger, but I'm not sure how you'll be able to reach inside without this part opening up. It's not that tall, but if you actually have to grab in, it will be a little bit uncomfortable. So now we've opened up the bonnet, the hood, and you can see that it's exactly the same. The composition, the layout, and the engine itself is exactly the same. It's as if the Stinger has implanted its heart over onto the G70. As for the G70, before it used to have the 2.0 liter turbo engine, and if you looked at the 0.100 kilometers, it was on the 8-second range. And now, because the Stinger has given its heart over to the G70, it has the 2.5 liter turbo engine with the model year change. And with that, you have 304 PS as horsepower. And as such, those people who were thirsty for stronger power, stronger thirst, as well as a burst in power, will be able to enjoy that even with the smaller engine. So now I'm in the driver's seat of the Stinger. From the outside, you think that the car is much more spacious compared to the G70, but I think maybe it's because of how everything is placed, you feel that it's a little bit more crowded. You have a little bit more towards the driver. It's more compact inside. I really do like the fact that they're still using these kinds of analog type gear knobs. As for the steering wheel, it is a sporty steering wheel and it has good grip. For this particular car, this is called the Acro edition with the suede-like material that is on the surface, as well as the door trim and the middle of the seats, which gives you better grip when you're driving in sports mode. One thing that maybe they could have done a little bit better on is the use of materials, like on the door trim on the top part here, or even on the steering wheel on the center part here, or even on the buttons that you can press, the analog type of press buttons. This is plastic. This is also a type of plastic, and this as well. On the G70, it's all leather or softer materials or more expensive looking materials. Even with the seats, I did mention that I did like the composition of the suede-like along with leather, but if you touch the leather part, it's very hard, it's very rigid. However, on the G70, these parts are very soft and the leather is very smooth and it's a higher quality leather that they use. Going back to the buttons, of course you do have a touch screen up here, but with the turn knobs on the HVAC, even with the fans on the HVAC as well, and buttons that you press down here, the plastic reminds you of Kia. And now one other difference between the Stinger and the G70 is that even with the driver's cockpit, if you look at the screen in the center, this is analog and only the screen in the center is digital, but it doesn't have that much color either. It looks as if it's kind of like a black and white screen. It's very minimal in terms of the functions. However, for the G70, the entire part here is all digitized. So you can actually play around with different settings. And when you actually turn on the blinker, you also get the camera view as well. And even with the numbers here on the speedometer, that I think it's very, it's not fit for Korea, because Korea, the speed limits are actually 30 and 50. So you really need to be able to see the 30 and 50 clearly, whereas here you see the 30 and 50 in smaller fonts. Another thing is that they wanted to place a lot of numbers on this actual circle so that they place them way too closely together that it's very difficult to read when you're on the road and when you're speeding. Maybe it was because they wanted to showcase a 0 to 100 kilometer and that needle moving fast, but apart from that, there's no benefit. And one thing, it actually goes up to 300 kilometers per hour, but actually this car doesn't even go up to 300 kilometers per hour. So, why put it there? The first thing I noticed while stepping into the second row seat was how high the center tunnel was. Definitely, you don't want anyone sitting in the center seat because they won't be able to put their legs anywhere apart from, on each side. It's really high. I think that this is one of the highest ones that I've seen these days, especially with so many EVs coming out. Apart from that, it is quite spacious in terms of the legroom. Even considering my driver's seat position, if I slouch and if I said that I had longer legs, even so, I think that you would have a little bit more space for your legs. And now for your headroom too. This kind of curve up here allows you a little bit more space inside, and you have therefore a little bit more headroom. The seats are also the same type of design as the front two seats. In the middle, they have the suede-like material with a little bit of design, the red stitching as well as the perforation. And if you have your armrest out, you have your two cup holders. So now I'm in the G70. It's very, very cramped, actually. It definitely is not a very spacious car in the second passenger seat. Legroom wise, if the front driver is small like me, then you might have a little bit of room. But considering that most will be taller, then you might not have so much legroom. You'll have to sit upright. And the problem if you sit upright is that the back part of the roof is slanted and you won't get that much headroom back here. One of the extra reasons why you see the second row seats be more crammed is because the thigh support on the seats here is a little bit more, supported. So you have a little bit more space taken up by the seat area. So you might get support here on your thighs, but you might not get enough room for your legs. Interior-wise, the first thing that you notice, the difference, is the materials that they use. The steering wheel, the seats, it's much softer, it's much more elegant, a little bit more sophisticated, whereas the Stinger was a bit more rugged. It's a bit more tough. But even on the door trim, you have, the diamond quilted version of the leather, and on the seats, it's more softer and more cushion. And even with the materials used here too, it's much softer. It looks more luxurious and it looks a little pricier compared to the Stinger. And even on the sides of the steering wheels here, you also have these knobs. The wiper, it kind of is the diamond type of cutting again. And the control knobs and the dials are all slightly more sophisticated. They scream Genesis, whereas the other one, the Stinger, kind of told you that it was a Kia. The biggest difference with the new model year change is that on the steering wheel, on the home cover, you have this covered in leather. And then you also have these knobs that are toggle type and the touch type HVAC system, which is also it's quite responsive. It also vibrates when you touch it, so you know that you've actually adjusted something, even when you're driving. One thing that I did like while driving over here was the frameless room mirror. It actually gives you a lot of width in your line of sight. Right now, I see the entire back window and even more. Overall, the impression that you get while inside the car is that, once again, the G70 is more of a luxury sedan, whereas the Stinger is more of a sportier car. So it's a matter of preference, but if you're looking for a more premium look or a luxurious look, then the Genesis G70 is the one for you. Whereas if you're looking for a more rugged and fast performance type, then I think the Stinger might be a little bit better to your liking. So it was as expected. The Genesis drives like a Genesis, and it's very smooth, soft, easy, light. The steering is very, very light. Genesis wants a wider range of target customers. They want the person who wants a more luxury sedan. They also want a person that wants a sporty drive. So right now I'm driving on comfort mode. So you can definitely assume that there is a lot of comfort in the drive. The steering wheel is so light. Seriously, it's as if you're not really, you don't need to even grab onto it. You can just use it with one hand and it will move. It's gotten better compared to some older like Hyundai models. So this one is a four-wheel drive with the 2.5 liter turbo engine. So compared to the previous version, which was a 2.0 liter engine, I mean, it has the power that it deserves. And because it's a smaller engine, it has more efficiency. I do feel that with the 2.5 liter, it's gotten more agile and it has more of a sportier drive, but you still do need to switch it to the Sport or the Sport Plus mode. When I was driving on the roads while I was getting here with the G70, I noticed one thing. I think with the higher end luxury sedan segment, what you really need is noise control, noise isolation inside of the car. And that's what Genesis, I think, has done quite well with the G70. At the time when I was coming over, I had a lot of cars around me. I had music outside playing, and the car was very effective in shutting out almost all of the noise, and I only heard minimal noise. Even with the honking or the fast driving of the car, it was very serene and quiet inside. So now we're in the Stinger. Honestly, I really do love this car, how it drives. More rugged type of drive. The suspension is a little bit more rigid, but acceleration-wise, how it gets to a certain level, how the car drives in general, how it brakes. Overall, I think that it's much more of a tougher and more sports performance-oriented kind of car. The steering wheel too. I love how the steering wheel is a little bit more, you need a little bit of strength to turn, and I feel safer with a heavier steering wheel. That's why I keep saying that sometimes the steering wheel is way too light, and I feel that it can like switch from one side to another, which is something that you don't want. Okay, let's try what happens in sport mode. Because to start off with, this car felt more like a sportier drive compared to the G70. Now the G70, of course, had two different levels, Sport and Sport Plus. For Stinger, the Sport mode, you hear a little bit of a change in the engine and how it drives. Oh, okay. Yes, it gets more push. I see. So it gets more push, it's a little louder on the engine, and even with the corners, you actually hear it. It sounds like an angrier animal compared to the G70. If you're thinking about the overall drive, I think Sport on Stinger is very similar to Sport Plus on G70. And the normal drive of the Stinger is comparable to the Sport on G70. Basically, we're saying that the Stinger doesn't have the very comfort luxury drive mode that the G70 has, which, if you think about it, means that the G70 has a wider range of a target audience rather than the Stinger, which probably has a niche market to look at. So guys, what did you think about our review? In comparison, I think that the Stinger is definitely a more niche-derived car. It is a sporty, more performance-driven vehicle, and it actually sounds like more of an animal on the road. However, compared to the G70, from the manufacturer and the brand's perspective, it's only a very small target that they are going for. So, in essence, you're not selling enough cars. And now, the G70, with its new model year revamp, is a wider range of a model. It has the luxury sedan. It also has the wide range of a Sport and Sport Plus, which actually gives you the breadth and the width of its customer pool. And not to mention the Genesis brand as well. But for me, like a car fanatic like myself, I do miss the Stinger and what it could have achieved down the road in the future. But you know, I'm not the brand maker or the owner of the brand. So tell us what you thought about our comparison of the two models, and remember to click subscribe. I'll see you next time.